thank you for coming. Nice to have you here. I'm going to hand it off to the folks on stage. Tom from GigaOM, who's one of our media sponsors, is going to be leading the panel, and welcome Urban Airship and Meridian. Thank you.
You guys can hear me? Good? All right,
Check.
cool.
1, 2, check.
Hello. We want to be in the music part, but we're going to be in the right. I'm Tom Krazit. I'm the news editor for GigaOM. I'm honored to be up here kicking off this conference. And as Rick mentioned, please feel free to ask questions. We want this to be an interactive discussion between all of us. And so we're here to talk about customers and how the role of the customer has sort of changed a lot in this new mobile era that we find ourselves. I mean, it's kind of, you step back and you take a look at it, there are so many different types of customers in the modern mobile era. 20 years ago, there was one company that dominated a personal computing market with hundreds of millions of machines, and now we've got 2 and maybe 2.5 platforms that are trying to vie for developer and consumer attention with 1 billion devices worldwide. Then you've got pressure from carriers on just how those applications are going to connect to the outside world, and you've got all kinds of conditions that make this an interesting era of computing when it comes to figuring out who is your customer and how best to serve them. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I'd just like to ask guys to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about what they do, and then we'll get going.
Sure, yeah. My name is Nick Farina, and I've been doing mobile apps for about 10 years before people actually knew what mobile apps were. I've been involved in making iPhone apps for Barnes & Noble and Style.com, and recently have started a company called Meridian, and we build apps for places like Powell's Bookstore or the Denver Stadium or the Venetian Hotel in Vegas. And yeah, I've just been doing mobile apps and thinking about mobile apps and specifically location-based apps for a really long time. And yeah, happy to be here.
How you doing? I'm Brent Hieggelke. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Urban Airship. Yeah, so you've been in the mobile space for 10 years?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've been in it for 9 months. So I don't know if that's why we were both chosen, but it's pretty cool to get 2 different perspectives, a veteran and a rookie. But I joined Urban Airship because Scott Wheaton, the CEO, was an advisor of mine when I did a startup. So I started a company about 4 years ago called Second Porch. It was in the social space, so not mobile at all. Although we kept thinking we should build a mobile app when we got there. We were acquired by a company called HomeAway, which owns sites like VRBO and VacationRentals.com and about 17 other sites around the world back in May of 2011. And then Scott Wheaton, CEO of Urban Airship, said, hey, we're doing something pretty interesting with Urban Airship, and we'd love to have you take a look. And I looked at it, looked at the mobile space, and said, okay, time to figure this thing out. So joined the company 9 months ago, and been having a blast. So, and then one other thing, we partnered with Meridian actually recently. So we haven't done a lot together yet, but we're pretty bullish on the potential. So there we go.
All right, so you guys are both, kind of in an interesting position in that you have services for developers. Your customers are sort of developers, but who those developers also have to focus on the end user as their customer while prioritizing the needs of the platform, companies, app stores, etc. So how do you figure out the best way to prioritize a customer need? Is it the kind of thing where you, do you think that well, and this will be interesting given your different perspectives actually, do you think that mobile has changed what it means to be a customer and how you prioritize their needs?
So I think if you could step back beyond mobile and what it means to be a customer, who you focus on, I think what's exciting, and I've been doing some seminars around the country, and I like to start every seminar with kind of let's step back and look at what's happened over the last 20 years. When I grew up, it was the entire world was about broadcasting at people, and it was mass marketing, blasting out messages, reach and frequency. You hit as many people as you can, as many times as you can, and that was marketing. And that was, you basically brainwash people into believing. And now we've changed the model completely, where the focus is all about how do you influence people, and how do you influence those people to broadcast to their friends, right? The social revolution has changed the complete model, where companies now really focus on influencing individuals, and the way you do that is by delivering amazing experiences, right? You can't hoodwink people, you can't throw out just platitudes and expect people to believe them. You actually have to prove it with great experiences, and when you do that, the people will go on Facebook or Twitter, and they'll go crazy. They'll Instagram. I mean, I've been with people that will Instagram the best marketing ever and share it with their 500 Instagram followers. I mean, that's the new marketing model. And so what that means is it's a great time to be a customer because you're now in charge. And I think that's probably the biggest shift that we've seen. And then when you take the fact that it's mobile, that just accelerates that. So now not only am I in charge, but I'm in charge everywhere I go. And I can Instagram something anywhere I go, and I can instantly be a marketing machine for a company. So that power shift is just phenomenal, and I think it's still, I think brands and big companies are still just getting their hands around it, and they're going from saying, well, we need to hire a social media intern to realizing that, no, we actually need to get much more focused on this overall. So anyway, maybe I'm biased because my last movie was in social, but I think you can't really decouple the two, because we've taken all the information in the world, we've connected it through the internet, and then we've all connected our social graphs and all the friends and people we've met, and now we can put it in our pocket. And that's where we're at today. We're at this point where people are realizing the power of those three things happening, and it's just getting started. I think it's an incredibly exciting time to be, in this space and thinking about starting companies.
Yeah, I think you mentioned how it used to be, you have kind of a broadcast-only channel where the brand or the space that you're in, or the company that wants to talk to you has one way that they can do it, and it's sending stuff out to everybody that is there or that's watching. And then we have the web, which is a lot more interactive, but it's still kind of sitting at your laptop or you're at your desktop. But with mobile apps, you have this like connection to the company that made it, or the indie developer that made it, or the brand that made it, and it's on your phone and it's with you like all the time. And you have access to it, they have access to you, to send messages to you, to communicate with you, and it's a way more personal channel than I think we've seen before. And you have this ability to like really kind of reach people and communicate with them in a really more personal way.
And I think, just to build off that, the reason why smartphones have exploded is because they're personalizable, right? The out-of-the-box functionality is cool, but the reason why people are going towards building smartphones is because they get to call the shots. They get to decide which apps they put on there. They get to decide when an app sucks and they delete it. They get to decide which apps are on their first screen versus their second screen. It is the ultimate configurability and personalization, and that's incredibly cool. Now it changes it a lot, because now we've gone from the web, which was unlimited real estate, right? Anyone can put up a website, it's expanding. You go to Google and you search for something, you find it. People don't want to do that on the web or on mobile. They want to click a button and have an experience, and I think that's why there's a debate around apps versus HTML5 or apps that didn't exist. I think consumers are voting with their downloads. They love apps. They love the experiences. They love the convenience. And so I think what's happening is, from a customer standpoint, is companies have been racing out to throw an app out there. Hey, we need to get an app out there. Why? Because we just have to. Our competitors have one. We want to be first. I don't think they realize that the customers that download your app and then go through the process and install it and then leave it on their phone are the very best customers you could possibly ever have. And I think brands are just starting to realize that. Wait a minute, these people that are downloading our apps, we should think of them as they are the bullseye of the dartboard in terms of people who are loyal to our brand. They're your very best customers. And I think that is just starting to permeate, a lot of these big companies that are racing around with, marketing budgets and a lot of legacy marketing.
I wanted to circle back to that because, Billy, actually, let's take a question, sure.
So let's say, who's doing it right then? I've seen a ton of people do it wrong. Who do you think is doing it right?
Who's doing it right?
I can't hear the question.
And can you introduce yourself just so we...
Hi, I'm Jason. I used to work at Urban Airship, but I don't anymore. Who's doing the apps right? What brands are taking advantage of this opportunity and rewarding their customers? Do you think, compared to, obviously we've all seen brands do it terribly, but who do you think is the best brands, big brands that are really rewarding those customers and taking that responsibility and opportunity?
Yeah, so two different ones. One is ESPN SportsCenter. It's a super popular app. A lot of people use it. Basically, I'm a Chicago transplant, so I moved from Chicago 15 years ago. I followed the Cubs, followed the Bears. I'm a busy guy, three kids. I can't follow these teams. I never, for the last 13 years, I've kind of lost track of them, except for they make the playoffs or they make the Super Bowl. But ESPN makes it effortless. They serve me the scores of these games as I walk down the hallway on the screen of my phone. That's phenomenal service. It takes all the work out of it. So I think they, and can they monetize that immediately? No, not really. If they just send me that headline, that's all I need to know right now, that's great. But it creates this affinity between myself and ESPN that I didn't have 3 years ago. So that's one example. One example that's not very well known, that I think is the best example, is Burton Snowboards. So Burton sells snowboards and snow apparel. And so you might think, okay, an app from Burton would probably be like a catalog on your phone to see the newest snowboard gear merchandise. But what they did is they actually created a powder alert. So what they realized that their customers care about fresh snow because snowboarders love fresh powder. So what if they could deliver an update to you that say, hey, there's a foot of fresh powder on Mount Hood, and then send that to you any day of the week, and you can actually control that. So you can go in, you can pick the ski resort you care about. So maybe you're a snob, you don't go to Meadows, or maybe you don't care to say Meadows, Ski Bowl, and Timberline. You can configure that. You can say, this is how much snow I need to get me out of bed. 6 inches, 12 inches, 3 inches, whatever. And then you can dictate which day of the week, which time of the day. So 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, you get an alert, hey, there's 9 inches of fresh powder. And all of a sudden, that starts changing your life, right? Because I never look at the ski report unless it's a Saturday or Sunday. It's not a good time, I'm working, right? But if I got an alert on a Tuesday that there's a foot of fresh snow, and I don't have a meeting till 4 in the afternoon, I might decide to play hooky and go up to Mount Hood. And all of a sudden, my life has been changed because of a snow alert. It's a simple thing, but it's an example of a company that says, let's not think of the obvious. Let's think of how do we service our customers using this completely new platform. And I think that's what gets me excited, is that the mobile platform is a completely new idea of how you can do things that you can't do through any other media channel. And so if you haven't checked out the Burton app, I think it's the epitome of where we're heading for companies figuring out how to break through something, do something really innovative.
So these mobile apps give you ways to interact and engage with your customers more than ever before, but that also sort of means it gives you more ways that you can piss off your customers more than ever before. So how do you manage that, providing enough usefulness in the interactions with them while not bombarding them and basically, turning them off your app?
Yeah, I mean that's a really difficult thing to do. I mean, you have when especially if your customer is a big brand or an enterprise company, and they are essentially, in their view, they're hiring you to build what they want, and they have really strong opinions about what they want and what they think it should do, and especially when it comes to things like, I'm sure you guys deal with this all the time with push notifications. Push notifications is like this it's like playing with fire. If you're us, we know how to use them properly, we think. But if you hand it over completely to a brand or somebody who doesn't really build mobile apps for a living, then it's easy for them to just kind of like let the fire hose out and piss off a bunch of people, and everybody deletes your app.
Or turns off the notifications, which is what I've done with most of the apps on my phone, because it's just too much. You just see nothing but them.
Right, but even that is like an advanced feature. Anytime if I'm looking at somebody else's, if somebody is coming to me complaining about like notifications that they don't want, really nobody's done that because they just delete the app because they're like, whatever, this app sucks.
Yeah.
But so we try and combat that through, our platform that we built has certain restrictions that make it a little bit harder to kind of abuse and irritate customers. But the other half of it is just education and trying to like give them best practices and explain to them, you know, okay, we're going to give you this thing, but be really careful because, you know, people are really fickle and they'll give you 1-star reviews and trash your app in the store and you're not going to like it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So we've taken a really aggressive stance on that, and we launched an initiative earlier this year called Good Push, which was basically going out to the market and saying, this is an amazing potential. The fact that the consumer is letting you effectively interrupt them anytime, any place, right? That's what they're saying. When you say, yes, allow push notifications, you're basically saying, I trust you to send me something whenever you think it's useful. And so, you know, we're going out and we're saying, it's not just a feature, it's a conversation. You're trying to build a relationship. You know, again, back to that, if you view these as your very best customers, then treat them like you would treat your very best customers. And so give them the controls to tell you how they want to be, you know, how that conversation should play out. Let them control the content. ESPN lets me pick the teams, the sports, the teams, and how often I want to be notified. Give the customer control, and they will allow you to have that conversation. And so, you know, we've been very aggressive at going out and saying, you know, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So just because they're letting you notify them doesn't mean you should bombard them. In fact, that the penalty for over bombardment is severe. It's deleting them off your phone, and that's what people will do. So we've been very aggressive at educating. I mean, you know, this whole industry is so new, and people don't know. We have customers constantly saying, well, what should I do with this? What kind of conversation should I have? How often can I notify people? And it's, you know, ESPN sends out like, I think their average is well over 100 notifications per customer per month. That's because they're sports fans who have said, I want to hear everything about the teams I care about. They can't get enough, right? Because the same people that watch SportsCenter every day on the TV. So these people want to be up to date on everything that happens. But, you know, most of your relationships with other apps aren't that linked. So most of the time, you know, you really want to be notified when it's something that really is relevant and interesting to you as an individual.
One thing we struggle with sometimes in my business is like knowing which customer feedback is real and which are just cranky people. You know, like which are the people who just like to be haters and which are the people that are actually just trying to help you develop a better service. How do you figure that out? Because that, I mean, that's something, in the news business, you look at comments on stories and things like that, and half of them are useful and half of them are stupid if you're lucky. You look at App Store reviews, you see a lot of the same stuff. So
we look at the data. So our customers have analytics that we provide that show them how are people responding to the push notifications. They can actually measure, you know, how are people that are getting notifications using my app versus people that have opted out of notifications. They can look at, you know, did I send that notification out and did a bunch of people, you know, opt out? So, I mean, you got to look at the data because individuals can be really noisy. They can be real, you know, they go on social media and create a social media storm. So you got to look at the data and say, what in aggregate, how do the customers respond to this stuff? That's the only thing that can't lie, can't be, you know, sort of unduly influential.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating sort of, it's like a fascinating thing to watch all the people that will just like trash an app with 1-star reviews and complain about how it doesn't, you know, make them breakfast in the morning or something. And even with like free apps where like the app is free and yet it still doesn't do something that the customer wants. And they'll just like, they'll, you know, go and tell the world about how awful it is. And I think it's a symptom of just the crazy high expectations that people have of apps in general. I mean, like right now, it's sort of this, it's kind of like this gold rush period where you have, you know, we had a couple stories in the beginning when the iPhone SDK came out of indie developers that kind of got rich overnight and hit it big. And now you have like all of these people who are spending like, you know, they'll spend like years of their lives and not get paid and, you know, make a startup. And, you know, it's like the most talented people in the world building these amazing apps. Like you can find the most amazing games in the world for like 99 cents in the App Store. Or building, you know, apps like Instagram that are equally as amazing, that are totally free. And so you end up with users who have these like insane high expectations for apps. And I think like understanding that and making sure that you don't overpromise when you know, tell the world about your app, put it in the store, that is a huge challenge to recognize that you're in this world that is just really hyped up right now.
Do you think there's a difference really between free and paid that way? Like the level of customer service or expectation that you have to deal with in a paid app situation or a freemium situation versus a purely free app?
I think it's funny that the staff doesn't make me breakfast, but people complain about a $3.99 app, right? It's like that's $3.99 for that. It's like a fortune. It should make me breakfast every day, and then they'll go spend $5.99 on a McDonald's sausage and biscuit breakfast, right? So the price value thing is so out of whack. I think we're over 1 million apps now out there, and I know for me at first it was no, I'd never pay for an app 3-4 years ago, but now I'll pay for an app if it really delivers the value. And so I think we're seeing that shift. I mean, I know on iOS, the revenue that's coming through the app economy now is really getting strong. I mean, Android's still struggling. They're way out of whack. iOS developers make a lot more money per app than Android.
The paid app market on Android is minuscule. Right?
Yeah, it's terrible. And so, iOS is, again, back to customers and trust, right? They said, we're going to curate these. We're going to make sure that when a customer downloads an app from the iTunes App Store, it's a great experience, and that's creating trust with customers who then come and set up and want to participate. And I think now people are saying, all right, we'll tap in and start putting on a credit card and take these.
Do you think that curated App Store experience has actually, because there's been a lot of back and forth about the App Store and like is Apple putting too much on developers and too much control? You can't do things that we're thinking about maybe doing in the future, that kind of thing. But you're almost sort of saying that like in exchange for that kind of hassle that you deal with, you get a customer that's a little bit more appreciative of the stuff that is in the App Store. Does that bode well for other App Store? There's the Google Play system, but then there's Amazon is also trying to build up its own App Store. There's other, third-party alternatives around the world. Is the curated model the only one that can deliver the customer trust, in your opinion?
I don't know if it's the only one, but I think it's proven to be successful. And the customer, you can't overemphasize customer trust. The trust. I mean, you get very few chances. If trust gets breached, it's really hard to repair it. So, being really conservative about that, I think, is proven to work well. I mean, why are more developers focused on iOS? Even though arguably it's a bigger hassle, it's because people trust it, people will pay for it, and developers make more money on that platform. So, I think time will tell if there's another alternative that becomes as successful. But for now, it's borne out to be the case.
I used to think that the sort of walled garden of iOS, where you have this really intense curation and you have these really strict guidelines, and you have like the review team where you have to wait 2 weeks for your app to be reviewed by a human.
Your real customer developer.
Right.
Yeah, App Store review team.
Right, yeah, you gotta satisfy the review team first. I used to think that was kind of necessary for great apps, just because of the, an app is like, has so much more power than a website. You can visit a website and you can close the browser and go back later if you want. But an app is like, it's this thing that runs on your personal device that you could eat up all your battery, you could run in the background, it has all of these power, it can access all your data and all of your stuff. And I thought that the Apple kind of model was the only way that was going to work. But, Android seems to be doing well enough, and it certainly, as a developer, it's great to not have to wait for Apple review. I mean, we don't sell any apps for, all of our apps tend to be free, so it's easier for us to say, well, maybe the Apple model doesn't really matter. Definitely, developers are making more money from selling apps on iOS, but I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily required anymore.
Yeah, I'm Doug. I work with Cloudability. I've got a question. So there's companies like you guys with Meridian and Urban Airship building out platforms that brands can build on top of, or companies can build on top of. What's the role of the agency there as that relationship evolves between the companies and the platforms themselves? Companies can just build on top of them. Is there a middleman needed, or?
We have, so we work a lot of times we work with customers directly, a lot of times we work with their agencies. So I mean, we really, we talk to both all the time. A lot of these brands rely on their agency to be the experts in a certain specific area. So, these guys have lots of, just deep expertise on the agency front that the brand can tap into. Because a lot of times, these brands they're dipping their toes into uncharted waters. So to go to somebody, if a brand builds one app, right, they have one experience point. If you go hire an agency that's built 150 apps, you get the collective benefit of all of that experience and the pitfalls. So, but I'd say we work with both of them, and we find both, they both have their pros and cons. We love working directly with the customers, but and sometimes with the agencies you're a little bit of an arm's length away, but they provide other benefits in terms of, they really know how to use your products, they know how to do, good push to their customers and use the technology wisely. So.
Yeah, it's adding another layer to the mix for sure, where you've got your platform, the platform developers, you've got your agency using the platforms, you've got the agency's client, which is the brand, and then you've got Apple and Google controlling the devices, and then finally at the very end of this massive pipeline is the the poor end user that has to use the result of all of these people being involved. And it just it's a necessary component, but it definitely makes it that much more challenging to end up with something truly great and focused, especially with apps. I mean, you really want an app to have to make sense and to have a focused, relatively narrow feature set, and to be elegant and simple and not be filled with buttons, and sort of the opposite of what you would get by adding more people to any process.
I've got one. My name is Nicky Gonzalez, and I'm curious, it's kind of a two-part question. What is the role of the app developer when it comes to customer service? If you're developing for a client, say, or in your case, you've got a map of a stadium or a retail establishment. What's the role in customer service of the app developers themselves, opposed to the client? And secondly, what are your preferred channels of communication for those customers? Are you using social media? Is it email? Is there an official website? All of the above, or do you have a preference?
That's a great question. In some sense, it's we're providing the tools for our customers at least to build the apps to then hand over to their end users, and so we definitely need them to be the kind of first line of defense there. If stuff breaks on our platform, then we have to find out about it, and ultimately, it's on us to make sure that everybody is having a good experience. Just like Urban Airship, I'm sure takes the same responsibility for trying to make sure that even though they're just they're giving you the tools, we all want to make sure that the end result is good and the customers are happy. Because if an end user gets pissed off and the whole world starts to decide that the thing that was built with your platform is no good, then that's obviously not good for you. But at the same time, you could be dealing with hundreds of thousands of people, and there's only so much that you can do to step in and monitor and help out when you're only responsible for a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, we have 65,000 apps who have registered to use our products. So, while we work with a lot of big brands, we've got a lot of independents, developers that are off. And our view is a lot of the great innovation comes out of these independent people working in their garages or in their basements. Sometimes some of the most brilliant breakthroughs come from those folks. So, but they are, in that case, they are the customer service, the marketer, they're the developer, they're the CEO. So, you got to make it so that they can kind of manage all of that. Then in terms of a lot of big brands and even our own stuff, people like to communicate, everyone communicates through a different channel. Some people race off and they call you, some people send you an email, some people go tweet. So we have a lot of customers that go to Twitter to talk to us. It's like having a conversation in the open, kind of like this. But so you just have to be everywhere, today. And that's the unfortunate thing is, fortunate or unfortunate, it's a lot. You have conversations that are going on in a lot of different places, so it's hard to kind of have one conversation, but it's kind of the reality. The good news is it's transparent, it's open, and so again, it shifts the power back to the customer, because if you get frustrated, you can go on to Twitter, and all of a sudden, the company that wouldn't call you back, all of a sudden has to call you back or has to respond because you just embarrassed them.
It kind of feels like dirty though to do that. Anytime I complain about some product or service on Twitter, I always feel like really, really guilty afterwards.
I've only tried it a couple of times, but yeah,
Well, you have to be extra careful.
I know. Well, Volkswagen hurt my wrath though. So.
Another question. I'm Sarah Conti. I'm a new startup in town called Presto Box. My question is, how do you get people to use your app? I know you're a little bit more on the development side, but what do you recommend to companies to get people really using it?
Well, I'll go first, and I'm sure you got great ideas. So interestingly, at Urban Airship, we don't focus really on the acquisition side of the customer so much. Our business is about building the relationship once somebody downloads our brand or our customer's app, so we can provide that ongoing communication. But I think, a lot of our big brands are now really starting to cross-market their app. So they're starting to realize that if the app is the ultimate relationship, and everywhere you market yourself, get that customer to know about your app and how to download it. So we're seeing a lot of folks saying, across all their media channels, go download the app. Right? So you can go to Walgreens now and be in the retail store, and you go to check out, and they're saying, download the app, right? So it's kind of funny, because now ideally, the retail environment's the best. I think, social media obviously is a hot spot. I mean, there's nothing better than having a customer have a great experience and then going out and broadcasting that. So if you can scale that, it's probably the most effective use of budget, because it's, invariably it's your time. I think it's some continuum between, what can you do with social media on your own for nothing? And if you're a big brand, you've got lots of channels, how do you use those channels to support what you're doing with an app?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're in a weird position because it's not like we are directly encouraging people to download our apps. It's more like we give brands and locations the ability to make apps that then it's their responsibility to get their customers to download them. And actually, that can be a challenge because there's this, the marketing department of the brand is really just interested in, they just want an app in the store. And they kind of think some of them think, well, once it's in the store, we launch it, it's done, wash hands, walk away. But if you want people to actually use it, then yeah, they gotta put up signs. They've got to get people to inform their visitors that their app exists and to tell them why they should download it and use it. I think it's going to get more and more difficult to convince people to download your app, just like it's getting more difficult to convince people to sign up for your web service startup.
Or to find these apps in the first place, right? I mean, that to me seems to, just having a potential customer find your app in 600,000 apps in the App Store and however many for Android. I mean, how do you find customers?
Totally. I mean, in iOS especially, and I think this is the case with Android as well. I mean, if you're making your own app that you're trying to convince people to download, your best bet is to just get picked by Apple's review team and featured. And that's kind of that's what you work towards. And you just kind of hope that happens because that turns your downloads from this to this. And apart from that, I mean, yeah, I wish I knew.
You guys have the benefit, right? If you walk into Powell's and there's all over the place, it's download the app, right? So,
yeah,
when you have that physical presence, it's great to cross promote. But I don't know if that helps you at all, Sarah.
My name is Kurt. I was curious, I've heard the word conversation, but I've also heard the word push a lot. And I'm curious about using apps as a more direct kind of feedback mechanism from customers to the brand, actively polling for information or ideas or, beyond just the statistics. So I was just curious if you've seen that kind of the other direction.
Yeah, so one of the use cases that's starting to really pop up for us is that brands can, send out a push notification notification, which, by the way, in case everyone doesn't know what that means, a push notification is a message that looks like an SMS that comes from an app. You have to opt into it, so you have to allow them. When you download an app, it'll say allow push notifications, and then if you do, that brand can send you one of these. So, you know, the first use case people think about is, oh, I'm going to get offers and deals sent to me, but it's increasingly becoming a service channel. So we have customers who are now thinking about sending out direct survey. You know, so and you know, one of the things we're working on a lot right now is location is part of it. So you know, it's a mobile device. People are moving around. How do you take advantage of that movement to provide better context for the messaging? So given that, if I know that you just walked out of my retail store, it's a great time. You know, today I always crack up. You walk out of, I mean, it happens across lots of companies, right? You walk out and they hand you the register tape, and it's like, you know, I bought a donut and I give you a register tape that's 3 feet long, and there's this long section about go to this website, type in this 42, you know, character code, and there's a survey, and we'll give you a free frosting on your next donut if you do that. It's like, who does that? I mean, what are the response rates? They've got to be just abysmal. And but imagine if you walk out and you get a notification saying, thanks for coming to our store, here's 3 questions, and we'll give you $5 of value on your next visit. That's a great experience, right? I'm in the mode, it's fresh in my mind, I can just tap a couple buttons on a phone, and now all of a sudden you're collecting very valuable data that's right at the moment of somebody's experience is fresh. So we think that's a huge future area where you know, these apps are going to become really, really focused on customer service. And but you know, we're so early on. I mean, one of the things that people have asked me, like, wow, you just joined this company in the mobile space. Are you kind of late to the game? It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, we are so early. You know, if you're thinking about starting a mobile company, you can do it. We are in the infancy. You know, there's like $6 billion in mobile app revenue, I think, this year, and Forrester's predicted it's growing to $55 billion by 2016. So we're, you know, like 10% of the way where it's going just in the next 4 years. So we are still so early that you know, a lot of the companies are still figuring this thing out, and there's so much room for innovation still.
Yeah, I think the Receive example is a good one, because it demonstrates just how desperate so many businesses and brands are for feedback from their customers. You know, and you go to like half the websites I go to, I feel like now have one of these super annoying pop-ups with you have to click the X. But it's like, you know, they're just like, they hunger for this kind of feedback. And I know with our customers, every single one is asked about, you know, for anybody that downloads this, how do we make like a survey section? How do we get people to, you know, tell us how they like the experience, what we can do better? You know, we've taken like baby steps in that direction by having links to take a survey or having like a feedback section, but it's going to have to be way more integrated, like you're talking about. You know, if you visit a certain part of a retail store, if you search for certain products, you want to kind of like very gently give people a place to give feedback that at the appropriate time, it's not going to be, you know, super annoying.
I think we have to call it there. Thanks very much, guys.
All right.